So today we've covered pediatrics, we've covered remote monitoring, we've covered AI, but that's not the full landscape of technologies that are available to us. So to cover the hot topics in medtech, we have the godfather of early stage innovation in medtech, Paul Grand of MedTech Innovator, leading us in our hot topics panel. Paul?
I'm going to have Matthew introduce me everywhere from now on. Anytime, Matthew. All right, panel assemble over here. Hi, everyone. I'm Paul Grand. I'm the CEO of MedTech Innovator. We are, at this point, the world's largest healthcare accelerator. So we know a little bit about innovation, and especially in the medtech space. I'm really excited about this panel. It's a great way to end the day. We're going to kind of rapid fire go through a whole bunch of topics that some have been discussed today, some have not been discussed today. Most of them have been discussed at some level. I want to introduce my panelists up here. I'm going to let them do their own introduction, so you guys should have microphones over here. And do a quick intro. We'll start over here with Jason and introduce yourself, and then we'll go down to Biren and then to Monica. So, Jason, start off.
Thanks, Paul. Jason Halac, Managing Director at Dexcom Corporate Ventures. I manage the new investments in strategic companies that are hopefully building towards our 10-year roadmap.
Hi, everyone. Biren Mehta, Johnson & Johnson. I've been there for the last 17 years. Spent 14 years doing business development, M&A, all in the medtech side. And for the last 3 years, I'm on the venture capital side. JJDC is our corporate venture capital arm, and I cover medtech investing in West North America.
Hi, everyone. I'm Monica Jain. I'm a partner at Wavemaker 360 Health, early stage healthcare venture fund. Also have my own consulting group focused on clinical and commercialization strategy. Have a background as a general and endocrine surgeon, surgical innovation officer, and in biomedical engineering and human factors.
Fantastic. All right. So how this panel is going to work is each of our panelists has a paddle. So hold up your paddles. Thumbs up, thumbs down. We're going to rapid fire go through some topics. We'll discuss some of them. And we'll definitely leave a little bit of time for the audience to ask some questions of you as well. But I'll start off with, easy softballs over here. Okay, all of you are investors, right? So that's so thumbs up. All of you are investors. All right. Have you made an investment this year already? Closed an investment this year? How about in the last 30 days? No. Okay. No. All one. Yes, Monica. What was your investment in the last 30 days?
It's a company focusing using AI and statistical methods to focus on clinical trials.
AI. Okay, good. I like it. So let's talk about AI really quickly. So you heard a little bit about this earlier. We were talking about AI. There was a session, and there was a little question about, technology versus leading with patients in a pitch. So when someone starts a pitch with you, when you walk up to someone and they say, "What do you do?" and they start to give you that little pitch, should they lead with, "Oh, we use AI to do X, Y, Z"? Is that positive for you, or is that kind of a turnoff for you at this point? Positive or positive? So Monica's saying don't lead with it. Biren and Jason, you like it. Okay. Let's just get through these really quick. Do you like when someone starts off leading with the problem that they're solving? Do you like that as the way to start? The problem? Yeah, everyone's a thumbs up. Okay, then I'm not going to keep going. And as far going back to AI again for a second. So AI, right? It's the panacea for everything, maybe. Is AI going to save the healthcare system money in the long term? Do we think the use of AI will save money in the long term? Save money? No. Everybody's kind of mixed. Jason, you don't think so? Why don't you think so?
I think it's going to make it more efficient, but I think the money is going to get circulated in different places.
Okay. We've heard a ton about the workforce burnout problem, right? Is AI going to solve that problem for us this year? Or is it going to make a dent? Is using AI going to reduce the burden on healthcare workers this year? Anybody? One yes? And Jason, you get the yes. Why?
I mean, some of these tools are already getting ingested into the ecosystem.
Yeah.
We heard about kind of the the note-taking apps and things like that.
Yeah.
I think, why not?
Right, that makes a dent. Okay, that definitely makes a dent. Okay. Besides medical scribing, is there another solution that you've seen where you're like, that's going to make a dent in the workforce burnout? Is there anything else that you can think of? And if not, that's okay. We'll move on. All right, let's move on. So for those of you working on AI solutions, we've got work to do. All right, so how about agentic AI? Who here knows what agentic AI even is? Do you know what agentic AI? Okay, no, Biren doesn't know. Okay, and for the two of you who know what it is, do either of you have you used agentic AI in any kind of a way yet, personally? No, kind of.
I would say I've seen it being used, I guess.
You've seen it being used. Okay, that's good. No, that's
Lots
good.
of demos.
Yep. So again, if you were making the assumption people know what agentic AI is, don't make that assumption. All right, so let's move on to business models. So I know earlier, Jason, you were on a panel and we were talking about business models came up as part of it as it relates to health data. So my question for the panel here is, will we have digital health business models scale to being multi-billion-dollar revenue opportunities in the next 2 years? Digital health business models in the next 2 years? No. Okay. All right. What about let's just talk briefly about investing trends. I asked you guys already if you're making investments, so we've covered that. But right now, are you investing in purely software-like apps, let's say, that have a consumer-facing model? Or is that a place that you would invest right now? No. Okay. Don't pitch these guys on that. How about just when you look at the consumerization of care? We talked about this again, another topic earlier today. I'm curious. So I think Lisa this morning, Lisa Earnhardt, was talking about the consumerization of care and about we talked about the CGM. So the CGM, Jason knows a little bit about. I know you know a lot about. The CGM has been phenomenal, right? I wear one. I know lots of people who use them. Jason knows I'm a diabetic, so of course I use one, but also I have many friends who I'm convincing now to use CGMs.
He's on the sales team.
I'm definitely on the sales team. He gave me a sample earlier, which I'll be passing out. But seriously, CGMs I think are phenomenal. Is there another biomarker besides glucose that you think will drive wide adoption of wearables in this year, or is it going to still be CGM? So let's say will be something besides glucose that is going to be a major biomarker driver for consumer adoption of wearables. Besides glucose, no from Dexcom. Okay, not this year. How about next year? Do you see something coming? Is there something you guys have seen? Yeah, Monica, you have something? What?
Yeah, there's a lot of movement in the femtech space. So it could either be female hormones in various ways, shapes, and forms to monitor them,
Yep.
Especially as it relates to fertility. There's also a lot related to menopause, and again, female hormones, temperature, things like that. So there's a lot, especially in those two very large markets, that I think is coming, but I don't think this year necessarily it will become big.
Okay, not this year, but maybe in a couple of years. Yeah, I agree with you completely, by the way. We're seeing lots of companies apply to MedTech Innovator, specifically in the hormone space. That's been something and some version of tracking that. We've seen a lot. Okay, as far as funding, so let's go back to funding again for a second here. So do you see, in the past, I believe MedTech has always been kind of like the bottom of the barrel when it comes to venture funding. It's like pharma, and then somewhere between diagnostics and tools, and then eventually you get down to medtech is generally the bottom. But we heard earlier in one of these other sessions that things have reversed a bit in general in terms of where dollars are being deployed. Do you see medtech rising to be at an equivalent level for pharma? Let's say for venture investing in the next year. Do you think we're going to see medtech get to that kind of level of parity? Anybody? No? Okay. What about what about so let's try and be a little more let's think about something more optimistic in terms of medtech versus digital health. Do you think medtech is more attractive now than digital health funding? Monica's a yes. All three. Okay. Biren, you haven't had a chance to chime in yet. Why is that?
Yeah, so I think traditional medtech are tangible business models, and I think when there's there's still a lot of unknowns, I think, on the digital side, and so there's a lot of investors, including J&J is a good example, where we're looking for more of the traditional stuff, and we're leaving some of the digital stuff to the others and let them develop it and let them commercialize it, and it'll impact our markets, but we don't need to be the ones necessarily driving it. So I just think traditional medtech are lower risk models, and there's a lot of unmet needs we still need to solve, and a lot of innovation to go fund.
And Monica, go ahead.
That. I also think that there's a lot of room for AI-enabled medical devices, and so traditional medical devices that we've known for so long, but now adding a continuous monitoring component to them, and that's really going to drive a lot of the growth in medtech in the next couple of years as well.
Good. Well, let's talk about driving growth in medtech a little bit then. I believe that we've had some discussion today about this a little bit in some of the other panels, but the topic of regulatory and reimbursement, right? That's certainly dominating everyone's minds, or at some level in terms of what's happening in this administration, as compared to maybe prior years. Do you think that we're actually going to get back to like the MCIT kind of era when there'll be immediate coverage after regulatory approval, maybe in Medicare? So do we think that we're going to get back to that? And you guys see that in the crystal ball in the future? Do you think quick? No, you don't think we're going to get to where some people are abstaining? That's fine. You don't think we're going to get back to that? Okay. I'm more optimistic. I think we are. So that's okay, but it's good to see everyone else's pulse. What about in general? Do you see, we've seen unbelievably lean innovation, I think is a trend that I've been seeing for a long time. And I'm shocked to see medical device companies in particular doing seed rounds, and they have clinical data already. These are not like, it's not the old days of this. Do you think it's getting less expensive to develop medical devices in general? Do you see that the trend is it's getting less expensive? Yeah, everybody agrees. And when you look at the future where I think clinical trials potentially could be more complicated, like we might need to see more randomized control trials and other things for adoption. Do you think that would it be a true statement in your opinion that that startups should be raising more capital at this point? So when they're coming out and they're saying, I'm raising $1 million for my seed, or should they be trying to raise more capital at the very early stages? Yes, Monica. Everybody's a yes on that. Maybe not. Biren, what do you think? I mean, you do a lot of early.
I would just say not necessarily, because it was interesting, the previous panel, the way they talked about it was interesting, to raise as much money as you can because you don't know what's going to happen, and that's valid. But it comes at a cost, right? If you come out the gates and you're raising a really large round, a very large Series A, it's going to be hard to fill. It's going to be highly dilutive, and you are potentially over buffering to an inflection point. So I just think, yes, you have to have a buffer. But like you said earlier, there seems to be more efficient paths to getting clinical data nowadays. A lot of stuff's happening outside the US, and things are able to move faster. So if they can get to that buffer on less capital, you should keep a buffer. If they can get to that milestone on a certain amount of capital, keep a buffer beyond that. But I wouldn't suggest raising as much as you can and overly diluting early on, because at the end of the day, it's going to hurt those early investors as the company matures.
Yeah, I think I'll add on that. I think you're right with buffer. Like the last panel, and talking about how much to raise and always raise more capital, I think that holds true. But being realistic about what you can achieve and having contingency plans mapped out to make sure you get that buffer.
Yeah. So are you advising? So are all of you investing kind of in the seed stage, or would you? Let's start with that. Does everybody here invest in the seed stage? Okay. So when you're talking to your companies in your portfolio about that next round, I guess you've already given a little bit of advice on don't raise too much capital, right? Or don't, you talked a little about dilutive capital or being overly dilutive. You're all investing in the seed stage. In the old days, the math was that the seed stage was the round I think that people made the most money on if you were in at the seed stage. Do you think that holds true today, that the seed stage is still the most valuable place to be investing? Not from Jason. Okay. And Jason, just really quickly, what's your thoughts on that?
I still think there's the uncertainty at the seed stage is still pretty high. I think Series A has a little more confidence. Usually you have some clinical data or some more evidence backing things up. So I'm going to go with Series A.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Biren, what were you going to say?
I was just going to add one thing is when you're shopping around your rounds, some people here are going to be doing that, and you're going to get a lot of no's. And I think in that conversation, definitely ask every no you get, like, at what point, what would you need to see to be interested? Because as you're thinking about how much to raise and what milestone to hit, you want to be aiming for the right milestone that is of interest to the next round of investors. And some of them won't give you a clear answer, but ask as many as possible, because for some, it might be first in man, which is what does that even mean? Does that mean one patient, acute results? For others, it might be a first in man cohort, and all of a sudden that's 30 patients with 6 months of follow-up. And so that could be a 1 year spread in terms of how much cash runway you need. So find out what milestones matter and then raise to that.
Yeah, no, good. Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to make a comment on what Jason said. So, and also what you had said, Paul. A lot of companies are coming now with clinical data at the seed stage. And so I think seed is such a wide spread of companies these days. And so it's very hard to say you are a seed stage company, because that means many, many different things. It could be a sub $10 million valuation, and it could be a more than $20 million valuation, and anything in between, any number, any amount of data in between. And so, seed is all relative, I guess. But the idea, I think, is that there are some seed stage companies that come with a good amount of data, but are still relatively early. And so that risk benefit could potentially be hit more often with a seed stage company.
Good points. Okay, let's go back to another topic. So, hospital at home is something that we hear a lot of. People pitch us on that all the time, on some device, some technology, whether it's remote care, whether it's telehealth devices, whatever it might be, in the home. We see it a lot, but we don't see a lot of them necessarily being incredibly successful so far. Do you think that, let's just call it hospital at home as a category will become a major trend in the next year? Anyone? We're going to have a lot of hospital at home kind of technology. How about the next 2 years? 2 years? Is there a yes in there? No, it's still no. 3 years. 3 years? Do I hear 3 years from anyone? 3 years. Anybody? No? No, we're still no. Okay. What about in particular, the remote monitoring aspect in particular? Again, do we see that is going to continue? Do you think we're going to see more remote monitoring in the next year than we do today? A little more? Yeah. Okay, good. So that's good for those of you who are doing your next remote monitoring startup. Okay. What about when we look at procedures? So I'm hearing there was somebody pitching us. I remember last month, I think it was. I can't even remember what the device was, but it was like a device. It was a technology that was prior done originally with surgery. Then that was done like kind of in more like outside, let's just say non-acute care settings. Do we see clinical procedures that were being done more surgically in the past actually being done in the home at some point in the next few years? In the home, are we going to have people coming out to people's houses and performing any kind of clinically surgical kind of procedures in the home? No. Yes? One? Monica? No.
Abstain.
Abstain. Okay, that's fine. So again, just keep in mind on that. What about if you think about procedures that are going to be successful though outside of an acute facility? So is that an area that you're investing in, or I guess maybe Jason? Well, let's just start with everybody. So is that an area that you're investing in at all? Do you see that as a place that's interesting to you? Non-acute, outside facility kind of investing.
Interesting and investing in are two different questions.
Investing in. Yes. No. Okay. I'm colorblind. Occasionally I get the color wrong. I'm sorry. Okay. So no one, but interested in, Monica. Yes. Okay. And is that as a physician? Is that what you're...
Yeah, as a physician, I mean, I was an endocrine surgeon, so I did mostly parathyroid surgery. So, just as providing an example, with thyroid surgery, historically we remove the entire thyroid, and then we move to removing part of the thyroid, and then now thyroid radiofrequency ablation, which is just a needle under ultrasound in the thyroid without a scar and a major surgery that's done awake under local anesthesia, is a significant treatment option for a significant number of people. And so I see that trend for many other disease states. And so I think that that's going to be a big driver of changing the way that we practice medicine even in the short term, but definitely in the long term.
Okay. A topic that came up that always comes up is supply chain. So supply chain, COVID was a big driver for people attacking the maybe the weaknesses in the supply chain. Would you say today, in this, especially in this environment, are startups and companies in general, would you say they're prepared now for supply chain disruption? Is that the case? We're prepared for supply chain. Better than before, Biren says.
Better than before.
Better than before. Okay. And are we? Is the problem that and maybe this is more just for an opinion, so you can talk about it. But I know we're better than before. How is it that we're better than before? Maybe just give us a couple of thoughts on where has it gotten better? Or is it just a generalism that we're better?
So I can, from my own experience, I can tell you historically in J&J, when you're doing contracts with suppliers or partners, you follow a template, and the template always had a section on business continuity, and it was an important thing. It was a thing that needed to be addressed. I think post-COVID, that section is much more flushed out than it used to be. And, planning for things like second and third and redundant supply and all that is coming up much more earlier in the conversation than it used to before COVID.
Okay. And are the companies in your portfolios that you guys have invested in, do you feel like they have redundancy in their supply chain, or they're prepared for disruption? We got an abstention. Oh, they're all no.
I just had a portfolio company have to drive to Canada to get products for a clinical trial back across the border. So, yeah.
And were they able to drive it back and forth? They didn't get detained or anything?
No.
Okay, that's good. That's great to hear. And what about in terms of just talent? So, we have, all sorts of layoffs we've been hearing about. Is this a good time for startups? Are they hiring in your portfolios? Or are people looking or are they downsizing? Are they hiring? Are people hiring right now, would you say? Your startups are hiring. Okay, that's a great sign. And from a, when you think about, we're here at a university. So I know the last session, which was really, really interesting, was talking a lot about late stage kinds of companies. But most of you, I think, you're probably pretty broad, right? You're pretty broad in your investments. In general, when you think about the early stage ecosystem, is this a good time for people who are interested to go join a startup, in your opinion? Or do you think they should be going to a large corporation? So is this a good time to be joining a startup if you're thinking about a career change? Would you advise people to go to a startup? Yeah, good. That's a good. We got some applause. Okay. Monica, you're wishy-washy on that one, though. Why? Why don't you think it's a good time?
It's a very difficult fundraising environment right now. And so startups have to fundraise in order to hire people. And so there are a lot of startups out there that are really struggling with fundraising. And so it's not necessarily that there's a ton of jobs out there, but the companies who are successful in fundraising are definitely hiring and looking for talent and raising, as we just talked about, bigger rounds. And so they have more cash to be able to hire good talent.
That's good to hear, too. I hear all the time from people, this is the best time, when things are crazy and the environment's difficult, like best time ever to join because maybe you get better equity in a company than maybe you would have before. Maybe there's just, more opportunity to do more interesting things, whatever it might be. I think it's a great time. So I would definitely encourage people, seek out startups for sure. All right. So coming back to just the overall kind of like environment that we're in right now, back in JP Morgan in January, right? I think we were probably all there. Maybe we were all there. We were everybody at JP Morgan. No, not Monica. Okay. There's thumbs up from the first two. Okay. So at that point, we were all really optimistic, I would say, right? Were you feeling optimistic coming out of JP Morgan that things are going to be better and the 25 is going to be better than 24? What do you think going in January? And even if you weren't there, Monica, would you guys say in general you were pretty optimistic? Thumbs up. So how are we feeling now? Are we feeling like 25 is going to be better than 24? Or is 24 and 25 kind of maybe equivalent at this point? 25 better than 24?
Better in what way?
Better in just in general. Like, are we feeling more optimistic about the medtech environment in terms of, we were saying before, it's a little difficult for fundraising. Maybe there's regulatory uncertainty. I don't know. There's all sorts of things out there. Are there more tailwinds than there are headwinds right now? What do you think? I don't know. It's a tough question. All right, give us your thoughts.
I was just gonna say, like, I think for kind of the startup ecosystem, working at a big corporate, I see the dollars getting tighter. Like, things are more uncertain, so people are kind of battening on the hatches and seeing where they can save money, cutting projects, things like that, which I think is just ripe for innovation in a couple of years, because there's going to be like this lull that we need to fill. So I think strategics are going to be more interested in acquiring technology in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I'll just summarize. I mean, from my observation, volatility and uncertainty increase risk. Like that goes without saying. And when you read the headlines day after day that are coming out, there's just a lot of uncertainty as to what might pop up tomorrow. I mean, we're all over the map right now. And so I think that's going to cause people to be a little bit more conservative in what they do.
Yeah.
I'm going to back both of them. So on one hand, I do definitely agree that uncertainty is a big issue, and that makes 2025 really difficult. However, it's also a great time to be innovating that within a couple of years, so not 2025, but soon down the line, there's going to be a lot of interesting activity as we rise up from this. But 2025 itself will be difficult, I think, still.
Will continue to be difficult. There's less than 3 minutes left. So if people have questions for the panel, think of a yes/no answer. And if you'd like to ask a question, raise your hand, and we'll have somebody call on you, whatever. So be thinking about that. I see a hand over here in the second row. Or maybe you're going the other way. Bring in the mic somewhere else. Okay. So let's just go on, like, just for one more minute here, and then we're going to get the audience questions in. So from let's think about like optimism and some of the things that are coming and things to be excited about. So in general, do you feel good if you look at your portfolio and you think about the things that you guys have been investing in, and in general, hopefully this is optimistic. Do you think most of your companies that are raising capital are going to be successful in closing their rounds right now that they're working on? So we got one down over here. Okay. That's just, no, you don't need to talk about it. Just curious for a sentiment. You had a hand for a question. Go ahead.
For a lot of AI and digital health questions, unanimously you raised red. Is it because of the inertia that exists in the market, or is it because the value that you do not see that value to be added? Is it because the industry is structured to resist to that change, or is it because the value is not there yet? Let's make it a yes or no question.
Yeah, I was going to say
it's because of the industry, the way industry is structured that we.
Is it a structural problem? Is it AI? If we have any kind of skepticism about AI, is it a structural problem in the industry that you would say? Structural? No? Yes, it's structural. Okay. All right, there you go. We can dig into that one more later. And again, if anyone else has questions, raise your hands. Hopefully we'll see. Is there one in the front? Matthew. That was your question?
Let's go ahead. So there's a disagreement between the financing panel and this panel as to whether or not you should raise as much money as you can. Imagine the collection plan could be hit $2 million, and they have the capability of raising $1 million with a board seat. Would you permit your company to spend only $2 million?
It's a question.
It's a question, yeah. It's not a thumbs up. Yeah. Go ahead. Repeat the question. You want to repeat the question?
Oh, the question was if you could raise $20 million and you only think you need $15 million for the inflection to get what you want to, would you recommend to take the $20 million, right? would you permit them to spend? 15.
Yes. Meaning if they only need 15 at the inflection point, I would, as a board member, I would hold them to that, but I would raise 20. I might raise a little bit more than 20. I think the question is, how big of a buffer do you raise? And it's very company subjective, understanding like what are the possible setbacks that can happen to that inflection point and what will those cost? But absolutely, like just because you raise 20 doesn't mean you spend 20.
And I'll add too, like, I think it's your confidence in the inflection, right? Like how much confidence that inflection is going to be an inflection to the investors that you're trying to raise with, as well as what is the certainty of capital at that time in the future. So we see that sometimes during certain periods, capital takes longer to raise. So maybe that $5 million extra bucks can come in handy.
All right, we're already over, and I don't want to go too over. Let me just ask each of our panelists just very quickly again, going back to the final question here, which is again, think about like the bet. Just think for a second in your head. This is not going to be a yes or no answer. This is an actual answer. The best thing that you're most optimistic about right now, something that whether it could be technology, it could be something that's happening in a policy, whatever it might be, but something that you're incredibly that gives you a sense of hope and optimism, something that you've seen, whether it's in this last month or whatever, but anytime, something that makes you excited about being in medtech and really optimistic for our future. I'll start with Monica down at the end.
I'll say that I think I've seen a lot more collaboration and engagement of many different players that are important for a startup. There's much more understanding of having a great team put together and having that great team then launch great products and great technologies and great platforms. I've seen that so much more recently than I've ever seen in the past. And part of that is tribute to conferences like this. And so I think that's made me super optimistic about the future of having real commercial solutions that are actually going to make a difference in medicine.
Excellent. Biren?
So I'm going to say something that's completely out of my wheelhouse, and it's going to go to the question we had. I'm going to say the AI piece really excites me, even though there's a lot of questions about it. How is it going to be monetized? How is it going to prove that it's better? But when I see what it's capable of doing, even as a consumer of it online, or see what my kids are getting away with by using AI, it just blows me away. And I just can't imagine if this is happening, 1 year is making such a big difference. What will happen in 5 or 10 or 15 years? Like it blows my mind how much things will change. And I do think it's going to completely change the way healthcare works. It's just going to take a little bit longer than the time horizons that Paul asked us about.
Right. All right. Jason?
I'm going to say consumer-driven healthcare innovation, where consumers and end users are taking more control of their metabolic health and their wellness and their disease with tools like AI. Like I can ask ChatGPT now what's wrong with me with my symptoms and getting answers, to wearing sensors and using bringing those data sets to your doctor and saying, this is what I'm seeing. That excites me, and I think it's going to continue to grow.
Fantastic. All right. Great way to wrap up the day, you guys. Fantastic panel. Let's give a round of applause. And if people want to reach out to you, I know people can walk up to you, I'm sure, in networking, but are you guys pretty accessible online, LinkedIn, stuff like that? Is that a good way? LinkedIn? All right. Thank you, guys. We'll see you in networking.